Good morning. This is Dr. Tom Dawson, and hey, you're watching the Best Practices Show.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the Best Practice Show, where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all over the world. And I have a huge special treat for you. One of my favorite people in all of dentistry, one of my early mentors and still current members. We're going to be talking about the next big wave in dentistry. Actually, it's already here. And this is an incredible opportunity for you and your patients. You do not want to miss this with Dr. Tom Dawson. So grab a pen and hit the share button. You are going to love this. Now, couple show notes. We are shooting this live on Facebook. So as you're watching it, if you have questions, add them to the feed, and I'll ask Dr. Dawson himself while he's on here, and we'll get the answers straight from the man himself. And even if you're watching later on, continue to add questions to the feed, because we want you to get the most out of this while you're on these and watching these. Love all the suggestions. You guys keep sending us suggestions for shows, things that you want to see, and we are lining them up, doing the best we can to get all these in order. You're going to see some of the world's best clinicians over the next couple months and weeks. I'm just crazy grateful. Love all the shares too. We are now up over 39,000 followers on Facebook. Over 150,000 of you have visited us on iTunes. And all I can say is just thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, my guest today, Dr. Tom Dawson. Now, I'm out there, Tom. You and I have been friends for a long time. And you were one of the early mentors that I had. And I don't know how God put us together, but our paths intersected, and through Dr. Mike Fling and Dr. Stephen Malone, I just ended up in your office one day, and this was so long ago, and I've told hundreds, if not thousands of people of the 7 to 3 concept, and I'm just going to tell you guys, if you're watching the show today, this is the man I learned about it first from. And there's so many other people that have done this. Now, this is just one of many things that you've taught me over time, Tom, that I've just paid forward to hundreds, if not thousands of people. But your journey in dentistry is an exciting one. You've been involved with some of the greatest thinkers in dentistry, taught some of the best thinkers in dentistry. If people are watching this, they've never met Dr. Tom Dawson, give us a little background on who Dr. Tom Dawson is.
Well, thanks, Kirk. You're right. I've been doing this a long time, and golly, it's gone fast. I look back, and it's hard to imagine that I've been in practice for over 43 years. I tell you that there's an energy and a passion for what I do every day that has not gone away. Matter of fact, it's probably stronger today than ever before. But I've been blessed in lots of ways. And early in my career, I connected with the Pankey Institute and was able to, enjoy a 30-year stint with them and teaching at all different levels, and also was 10 years on the board. And in 2005, stepped away. I sold my practice of 37 years in Arlington, Texas. It was a full comprehensive practice, very much what people would characterize as a restorative practice, and focused on excellence and comprehensive care. We had 11 employees, and we had 7 treatment rooms in the last office. And I was blessed to have people, had 3 at the time I sold the practice, that had been with me for over 30 years. So at one time we calculated our time together, and we had, I believe we'd calculated over 200 years of experience in dentistry, and over 150 of those years together as a team. So I would put those numbers against almost anyone that's been in practice for a while. And so I was blessed in many, many ways. I've loved the teaching aspect of it. And through the years, I have had an opportunity to have people like John Cranham in my classes, people like Gary DeWood and Steve Radcliffe, and those folks have gone on to do great things in dentistry and had a huge impact. But it was amazing that it put me in a position to really experience conversations with people that were thinkers and doers in dentistry. And it's just moved me down the road as I've tried to associate with people that were people like Pete Dawson, and people like LD and Lauren Miller and John Anderson, and just the greats that we recognize that change what we do and how we do it every day. So Now I'm moving into a new era. I have a practice. I built a new practice in 2008, built a new office, and people would look at me and say, what the heck are you thinking? But I wasn't done yet. And so now I'm living the dream. I have one chair and one employee, and all we do is complex restorative dentistry.
Wow. Simplicity at its finest.
At its finest. At its finest. I think I'm doing some of the best dentistry I've ever done. Yeah. So that's fun.
That's awesome. And today we're going to be talking about the next big wave in dentistry, and it's not coming, it's already here. Now, Tom, give us a little background on this, because you've seen all the waves, from the early waves to the intermediate waves to the current waves, and you are convinced, and I am too, of where the next big wave in dentistry is. Give us a little context about why this conversation is so important.
Just out of the blue the other day, I know Kirk's a busy man and he's everywhere. I don't know how you do it, but I called you just as a kind of a thought I was having about where are we with this whole wellness theme in dentistry. And luckily you picked up the phone and called and started our conversation. And it seemed that you and I were both having the same thought about where we were and having some different feelings about how the profession was really handling this opportunity. I've kind of lived through the occlusion wave back in the 70s and 80s, and then we morphed into the aesthetics time zone, and now I believe we find ourselves in a whole new era and opportunity in dentistry, and that's being generated by some folks that you and I both know very well, and that's Dr. Bradley Bale and Dr. Amy Doneen. Dr. Bale wrote a book called The Heart Attack Gene, and I would highly recommend that for folks that are thinking about maybe, first of all, upping their game for their own personal health and wellness, but for those that come to see them, it will totally change the way you look at what's ahead of us and what can be done, because he has opened our eyes to the fact that we can't help people be as good as they can be, to be as well as they should be without dentistry.
Right.
Because he understands the connection between the bacteria and periodontal health, and we've thought about that. We've talked about it a lot in recent years, but I don't think it really brings the message home until you hear some of his stories and you hear some of the patients he's absolutely been able to help, and he couldn't do it without the periodontal connection.
Yeah.
So it is real, it is here, and it's now. What do we do with it?
Yeah, this is required reading. If you're a dental professional and you haven't read this book, you got to read this book. It's Beat the Heart Attack Gene by both of them. Now, it's a big game changer. We just had Dr. Bale out at our Mastery Summit in Napa, and some people have been exposed to his work, some hadn't. And when everybody was in that room, the consensus was it was amazing, because in the past, Tom, if somebody hasn't read the book, let's shed some light on that. We've been able to say it could be systemically linked. Now we can say definitively it is. And this oral health connection is an incredible opportunity for the future of dentistry. So shed some light on that.
Well, let me tell you where I'm coming from on this and what lit the fire in me, and that is I have a history of heart disease in my family. My dad died of a heart attack at 74. My granddad died of a heart attack at 68. And so all these years I've been healthy, I've been well, and by all methods of testing, stress test and everything, I was healthy. I take no medications, which is pretty amazing to reach this stage of life and have that. But deep and down inside, I knew that there was more to my story. And so it wasn't until I connected with Dr. Gina Pritchard, who is one of the first offshoots of Bale Doneen disciples. And she has taken this on as probably one of the premier lecturers for them as well. And Gina was my doctor. She went through the testing with me and literally came to my office, spent 4 hours with me gathering data, and we came back together and had a 6-hour consult. Well, lo and behold, I have the heart attack gene. Luckily, I just got it from one parent, so I'm just half as bad as I could be. And I also have the worst possible combination of heptoglobin, which again is a multiplier for someone who has a heart attack gene. So I was kind of got the double whammy in the bad news, and so I started looking at where I was, and I started in this journey of wellness about 9 months ago. So the next thing was on me, and that was to begin to bring my body mass index and my weight bent to a normal range, and instantly my numbers within 6 months were hitting the ideals. we got rid of the biggest, most frightening thing for someone who has heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and that is inflammation. Dr. Bale talks great lengths about that in his book and why we have those things. But my inflammation markers were gone, and I'm under control. As he calls it, I've got cool arteries at this point.
Yeah, they actually have a guarantee too. Like they've never had anybody have a heart attack. Is that true? Like, is that, from what I know, it is true.
I am all for that. That's what I signed up for. And so I'm counting on that guarantee. But you know what? The good news is I have great energy. I've always had a lot of energy and move on a lot of tracks at one time. But I feel like I've got a kind of renewed peace about this for myself personally. And that lit a fire in me for wanting to share it with other people, because I knew what it did for me. It did for my psyche, and I know it's for my health. And so I think I can move down this track a long time.
Yeah.
I read another book not too long ago, several years back, and I think you had talked about it too, Younger Next Year. And another good book to consider. Just your own mortality and what do you want to accomplish, and do it in a way in which you do it with vigor and have a lot of life. And that's really what this story is all about.
Absolutely. It's about finding the next chapter here. Now, this is different, because some people might be watching this say, I go to a cardiologist, I'm good, but this is a different way of thinking. And so let's start there. And then Tom, also, people don't always have to have a one chair practice and a one team member practice to embrace this type of thinking, because even when we were in Napa and Dr. Bale was there were several dentists in the room that had already been through his preceptor course, and they are saying this is the future in dentistry, one of the major futures. You've got airway, you've got the systemic link with the Bale-Donine method, and then you've got medical coding, which is a whole nother subject. But this is an incredible opportunity. If you're a young dentist watching this, you cannot ignore this future in dentistry.
You really can't, Kirk. And I would say what's happening with our medical colleagues is really somewhat of a crisis now. I think there's a lot of disarray in trying to figure out what do we call this, and it's kind of flying over the head of a lot of medical doctors. And I think Dr. Bale is quite frustrated by the fact that they're just kind of ignoring it. They're doing what they do, and from my way of thinking, if you sit down and have a conversation with most people, they're really they don't feel like their doctors are helping them reach what their full potential could be. It's a label that's almost kind of a fringe element in their estimation. And we're referring to this role or this style of medicine as being integrative medicine or wellness medicine or oral systemic health. Functional medicine comes up. And so we're having a hard time wrapping our arms around, what does this look like? What does this mean? And I think if you looked at the medical marketplace, basically they're just treating disease. It's a repair disease cycle that continues, and it's heavily pharmaceutical driven. There's not a lot of education to our patients about how to be better. It's not even acceptable to question. Right. So it's not reaching the endpoint that we go to our doctors for. They kind of lost their mission.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so where do I even start? So Tom, give us some perspective on what you're doing in your practice. Now, again, I want to just kind of paint this picture. Cardiologists have been doing this for a while. They've moved away from the medical model, and a lot of them go into concierge medicine. That's not a new thing. No. And we've seen Dr. Boone do it in Denver. A lot of these people building incredible practices with smaller patient bases where people are paying cash to be well. And there's an incredible market out there for people that want to be well.
Yes. I think that's the biggest growing marketplace that's out there, especially if you look at the dynamic of what's happening in medicine today. Insurance companies are struggling, our government is struggling, and I cringe every time a politician says health care. Because I really don't think anyone has a clear vision of what that means. And I think Dr. Bale has given us the idea to maybe wrap our arms around and capture what this new meaning might be. And so when we say a comprehensive health and wellness practice, it has some very specific parameters. And I think you addressed that a while ago. As I'm in the process of putting together pieces right now, dentistry is the centerpiece of this. But if we could have a facility where patients come And the common denominator is they're looking for wellness. Now, that may start and probably will start with your dental practice. And there's a gentleman I'll alert you to because I think you need to know about him. His name is Dr. Tim Donnelly. He's a periodontist out of Bowling Green, Kentucky. If you ever have a chance to hear Dr. Donnelly, he's an interesting man. And so several months back, I went to one of his seminars. It was in our local dental society, and I was excited because he was talking about implant dentistry. And I thought I was going to get the latest and greatest periodontal perspective on implant dentistry. What I got was a day-long lecture on wellness because he believes that he can't start and have success with implant dentistry unless he has a patients that have a certain health profile. Mm-hmm. And it all begins with all the things we're learning about wellness. So he's gone so far with this whole concept that he starts with weighing his patient's body mass index. He has an A1C value that he assigns with each patient and does blood work right there in the office. So he's the first person that I know. And as he fills out his health history and goes through all these different elements of wellness, from sleep to being a diabetic, possibly whatever might be an interference, he prefaces his questions by saying, why is this important for me to know about you? Because he's kind of diffused this whole mentality of, well, you're not a doctor. Mm-hmm. Why are you asking me this? Then I think that might be a first logical response. But in reality, the way he services it with just 2 lines of information, this is why it's so important for us to know these things about you so that we can be the best periodontist for you. Right. So we can provide you with the wellness that you need. And so just as a sideline, a great way to start thinking about how do we interview patients and how do we bring people into this conversation? I watched a dentist struggle for years trying to just have a conversation about comprehensive care. Mm-hmm. And knowing what a complete exam looked like and knowing what to do with the information once we got it. That's not going away. It's not going out of style. It's the backbone of what we do. We're just adding something new to that. I believe our dental schools are going to have to support us in that. And I've talked to several deans, and I believe that they feel like this new wave of wellness, that opportunity is going to shape their curriculums, and they're already providing and thinking about that as we speak. Mm-hmm. But I don't want them to ever shift away from the core message, and I think I have some concerns about that too, because we need to graduate very competent dentists in the basics of restorative dentistry. Along with that, we can train them to have this wellness mentality as well.
Yeah, and why do you think it hasn't picked such a critical, gotten any teeth in some of the maybe earlier phases of a dental's development in their career? Is there just no clear financial path? Give me your thoughts on that.
I think there's a lot of factors with it. I think when dentists want to think comprehensively, there's a lot on their plate to try to manage. And I would say this. I think it's a little bit different perspective, and I think it would be impossible in today's world to be a master of all disciplines. Mm-hmm. And a huge task. It's just the body of knowledge is so great. But you do have to be excellent at your core competency. With what I'm talking about is basic dental, being a basic restorative dentist. That's number one. Mm-hmm. So that's a handful right there, wrapping your arms around it. So I believe going forward, as a young dentist might be looking and thinking about this, it's just know that you've got the platform to launch out into practice, and that you're going to be building this core competency for the rest of your career. You're going to be a constant student, more so now than ever before, because it's coming at us so fast, and yet it's very, very doable. We got bright students. That's what's so impressive to me about young dentists, is that they were probably much more equipped to run on multiple tracks than we ever were coming out of our schooling. So they can handle this data, but I think there's a priority, and for me, foremost, it's being excellent as a dentist. And once you feel like you've mastered that, and not trying to take on everything, but know what that path for you is going to be. Right. So we can't be gifted in all of these things, but decide what it is. Those things that you want to incorporate, get them under your belt, be good at it, then take on the wellness.
Yeah. And it could even be, it doesn't have to be taking it all on at one. It could be small steps. Just embracing this thinking and hygiene could transform a restorative practice. Now, when you're looking at this too, you've heard the insurance conversations going on in dentistry forever. Yeah. Insurance isn't going to get easier. I mean, insurance, providers aren't going to go, you know what, we've been really rough on dentists for a long time. Let's start reimbursing them. That game is going to get harder. And what you're talking about is you're having conversations. This is really going to be a behavioral type situation where you're going to get to know people, and they're going to have to be able to reach in their pockets, make value-based decisions on their health. And it's an incredible, it's just, it presents itself in so many different ways as like a triple win for the patient, for the practitioner, and for our profession over and over again.
I think without a question, you've hit on, and the key to it is really understanding what a relationship-based practice is about. Because without that level of engagement, you're not going to be able to move people into this whole new era of wellness. And I think so many dentists are wanting that, and yet they find themselves not understanding why people don't follow them, don't fall forward, don't move forward. And it's the relational side of the practice, and it takes them a while to develop those skills. But until you can sit down and have those conversations with patients, one of the factors that I think is left out many times is taking time to have that conversation on the front end, to know the patient, meet the patient, have a great interview with the patient.
Yeah.
And I know that's what your group promotes and teaches, and gives people maybe a new perspective they haven't thought about before. But that's really what opens the door. And once that's on solid ground, you got the opportunity, because you're building trust literally from the moment they answer the phone. And once you get that, they will follow you anywhere.
Yeah.
And the money questions really start to disappear, because they want what you have to offer them.
Absolutely.
And, it's really, I know it sounds crazy. Dr. Pankey used to say, if you don't have it on the shelf, you can't sell it.
Right.
So you have to own it inside. But once you have that confidence, it comes through, and people will absolutely beat a path to your door.
Absolutely. Now, this concept isn't so crazy, because you introduced me to the Cooper Clinic, which many years ago, Sarah and I actually went there for a full day appointment, and our appointment was with a doctor who, fortunately or unfortunately, was sick that day, and I got Tyler and Kenneth that day to be my doctor. Now, that's not cheap. It was $4,500 for me, and it was a whole day with one doctor, probably the most comprehensive exam I'd ever had. And when Kenneth Cooper he said, "What do you do?" I said, "I work in dentistry." He goes, "Dentists are the future. Don't you know that?" I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "This little hole, that is the future of keeping people healthy." He goes, "I'm not even a doctor. I've never worked in insurance. Like, we do something way outside of that." He said, "But if dentists can get this, 70% of health is how you move your body and what goes in the hole under your nose." I'm like, he goes, "Billionaires park their planes out here and they go, 'Give me the pill.'" He goes, "You want the pill?" I go, "Yeah, I'll give you the pill." And he tells them that. I go, "You tell people that?" He goes, "I tell people that all day long, because dentists can see more of what's going on than any MD, and that's just the cusp of what's coming on in the future." So I think, Tom, this is not so much of a foreign model. People are willing to pay for this, and be healthy.
Yes, and so what was, I guess, as I was sitting and learning, I went to Chicago this last year, and what was interesting to me was the Academy of Occlusal Equilibration had a meeting that was totally devoted to a wellness practice, and Bale and Doneen were there, and a lot of other folks were there. It was a great, but it was intriguing to me that this long tradition, history of occlusion, and TMJ Academy devoted their whole time to this wellness. So I said, okay, I got to go there and see what this is about. Mm-hmm. And then I spent the rest of my time in Chicago over at the American Academy of Oral Systemic Health, AOSH. And same story going on over there. A little crazy, but hey, they got a lot of good stuff going on. And it was mostly hygienists and a guy up front really, leading the cheers. But it was fun. It's like these folks are onto something. Mm-hmm. So I came back and I began to think about it. And I connected with my doctor, Dr. Pritchard. I talked to my internist, and he's a Bale Doneen doc. He's a DO, and he was up in Seattle, and he found out that he had a bad bacteria in his mouth through his testing and said, I need a dentist. Who do I go to? And she said, go to see Tom Dawson. So it started the conversation. It's almost like God was just putting people in my path that said, hey, you guys need to hang out together. So the three of us have been talking for the last 6 months, and we want to do something different. Mm-hmm. Because at AISH, what was exciting to that group was that we got a cardiologist and dentist that wanted to partner. And that's great. Mm-hmm. But the story's much bigger than two docs partnering together. And so it got us thinking about, what does the perfect clinic look like? And so we're in the process of putting that together. And I'll tell you what pieces we've put together so far. And we're getting buy-in, a cardiology piece, an ENT piece, an internal medicine doc, a sleep medicine practice that involves not only dental, but also medicine working together, along with a respiratory therapist, a pediatrician, a pediatric dentist, an orthodontist, and an oral surgeon. That's all part of the sleep medicine department. We've got a nutritionist on board. Weight management is probably one of the things when you step across the threshold, you're going to be faced with first. How do we bring your body mass index into a normal range? We got to have a super dental hygiene program, because that's where we're setting the protocols for moving forward. Is what is the dentist's role in this whole oral health connection? Because when we find problems, we have to know how to take it back to health. Absolutely. And honestly, we're still discovering those things right now. We've got an imaging department, a diagnostic lab, a compounding pharmacy, a collaboration and communication area where the team meets together. And this is key, because if you go out in the medical community, we have a hard time getting docs wanting to talk to each other. Our facility is devoted to and wants to get together to talk about you as the patient. Mm-hmm. So whole different mindset. And this is what everyone's buying in. We've got a dermatology doctor who's highly successful. She wants to bail out of dermatology and join our group and be part of this as a dermatologist, but totally from a wellness perspective. We're going to have a teaching facility as well to teach our patients and those that are interested in wellness, as well as our medical colleagues that want to have this style practice. And then finally, a research facility. That is a tall order, but we believe it's the scope of what could be. And it's really kind of like you brought up Cooper Clinic. It's a model fashion, much like that, with a different outset and a goal. And that's really where we're headed.
Yeah, and Tom, that's so exciting, because some dentists may be watching this go, Tom, I would love that too, but that just doesn't happen. It requires somebody to step up and lead, correct? Like, you got to be a little bold in your thinking. Give us some background on how you feel about that.
You know, it's really interesting. I think sometimes we think of ourselves as dentists as maybe not being dynamic and outside of our environment. Mm-hmm. But when you sit down and have an honest conversation with colleagues, that you find, by golly, I know a lot more about my practice and how it runs than my medical colleague. I know a lot more about this than the average person that, first of all, you thought would have it all together, and they just don't. Mm-hmm. And so dentists are preventive minded. They've got the tools, they've got the background on how to run their practice. And so in my mind, especially dentists who've gone through your program and understand what you do, my goodness, you prepared them well to be leaders in this movement, because the medical colleagues around them are not necessarily to burden so much with work and time. Not that our dentist friends aren't, but I think they're much more prepared than they realize to take this on. So don't be timid about who you are and what you are, and start finding people that are like-minded that want to join this and start a conversation. And you'll find that whether you want it or not, they're going to put you in the assignment of taking the lead on this thing. And that's the role that I'm assumed. And this is interesting at my stage of life. Obviously, I've got time to devote to it. Still run a practice, running a software company, developing some tools. We're doing a lot of things, but this is the one that's really got my attention right now, and I'm looking forward to where this takes us. In 6 months, I hope to tell you what pieces we got in place and what's going on. Right now, Gina Pritchard and I are committed to beginning our work together before the year's over. Yeah. And so we'll take that next baby step in creating this.
Yeah, I always love to ask people that have seen it all. No, Tom, what do you see in the next couple of years? What do you see this looking like? How will this take shape if I'm a young dentist watching this wave?
I think what you're going to hear, and I think the conversation we should be having, because this is not going away. Uh, this has it's the right thing at the right time, and I think we're the ones prepared to take it on. Our medical colleagues are just looking the other way, and so if you're looking to expand your practice, if you're looking to help your patients, and if you're looking to create something that's a dynamic that's exciting to be a part of, it's time to get on board and investigate this. We're going to see models of practice step up. And I'm not talking about a model of practice of wellness that I think has been baby steps to this point with essential oils and massages and those sorts of things. I'm talking about something that really makes a difference in people's long-term health. And I know in dentistry, Dr. Pankey used to encourage us to say, you're making a difference in people's health. And even doctors like Dr. Cooper and the doctors at Mayo Clinic recognize that people with their teeth and different than patients that maybe struggle with their oral health had more longevity. They had as much as 10 to 20 years longer than their counterparts and had a healthier, happier life. So it's been recognized, but now we know why. We know why those things are possible, and we can be right smack dab in the middle of it, making a difference for patients. That's exciting. We're not saving teeth, we're saving lives. That's a bigger mission.
Yeah, it's not
both.
Yeah, it's not the same business. I always say there's people that fix teeth and people that change lives. You're in a completely different business when you start doing that.
No doubt. And so I just think that we'll start to see models of this pop up, different people's vision of what it's going to be, and that I'm biting off a big chunk here. I know that, but oh my goodness, the anticipation, the excitement of those people around us, like, what do we do next? What's the next step? And so I'm busy trying to carve that out for us. And I think sometimes if you've got in the weeds too much, it'd scare you to death. So I'm just being led in this process. We're keeping the door open. We're having conversations on a regular basis. And it's amazing what's coming up on paper and how much buy-in we're getting from folks. And I have this conversation with my patients all the time. As limited as they are, these are folks that are really interested in their health and their well-being. My population base of patients that I see is mostly over 50, and health is a big issue for them. And when I tell them what we're up to and what we're thinking about, man, they get excited because tell me when you're ready. I'm ready to go through the process right now. And I go, well, we're not quite there yet, but you have more influence than you think you do in your practice. I think we underestimate that many times. So begin the conversation with your patients. Begin to move into some of these questionnaires with sleep and other things about people's overall health and well-being. And begin to educate yourself. Read the book on heart attack gene. Go to these courses now that are popping up at our local and state meetings that are about wellness. And I think what you're going to find is a conversation that maybe is totally new to you, but totally exciting about what the possibilities are. And I just see this as an incredible wave of what's coming the next future.
Well, we're going to ride the wave with you. I always ride your waves because they always lead me to the right place, and they help so many other dentists. And I agree. I mean, if you haven't started, just start with the journey of reading the book. You will get excited, which will force you to get excited with your patients. And Tom, people do want to have these conversations because what we've learned in a long journey is you don't really have any problems until you have a health problem. Most problems can be fixed, but health problems, we're guessing sometimes whether we can fix this. So I totally agree, buddy. And I am just so crazy grateful for all the wisdom you've given us and me and some of the other dentists that you've coached along the way. And you and I are going to have many conversations about this as we move forward. Now, yeah. And
I look forward to that.
Oh, buddy, we're going to have a great time. Now, I do know people are going to want to know more about this. They're going to want to be able to reach out to you. And keep in mind, some people are listening to this on iTunes. How can we find Dr. Tom Dawson?
Kirk, I think the best way is just to email me at drd at DawsonDDS.com. Dr. D at DawsonDDS.com. And I'll be happy to respond to your emails and look forward to those conversations. I always love talking about it, and I'll tell you where I am, and that's all I know. But hey, we're learning together.
Tom's he's a great giver of information. He's a straight shooter too. There's so many times you told me, don't do that. That's dumb. And I'm like, oh, thank you. You just saved me like 9 years of my life, so I appreciate you, buddy. So thank you so much for being on today. Stick around while we say goodbye to all of our other viewers that are watching, and I want to chat with you after we go. But thank you guys for watching. And
thanks,
it's my pleasure, my friend. So stick around here for just a second. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed today, just do us a huge favor, hit the share button, share this with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions that you want to see on the shows that are ahead, even with Tom or other clinicians or other topics. Just keep sending them to us. And until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy the rest of your day.